Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Julia Beauchamp and I'm here with Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon, as well as Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus. We have a really special show today. Not only are we going to be talking about the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro and the Tensor chip, and how it will sort of stack up to the iPhone 13, but we also, after Ken and Mike dip, we will have a segment with Computer World Managing Editor for Features, Val Potter, as well as Computer World writer Charlotte Truman, about making hybrid workplace and a hybrid workplace successful. We are live on LinkedIn as well as on YouTube, so if you have any questions during this segment or the next segment, please do leave them in the comments or the chat, and we will do our best to respond to you live while we're on air. So the Google Tensor is the new system on a chip, and I guess, is this certainly one of you would know, is this a new step for like Android phones in general, or is this just a new thing just to Google? Like, does Samsung have their own system on a chip?
They do. First of all, we're the special part of this special edition show, Julia. You neglected to mention that.
I'm telling you, over the next hour or so, there's a lot of Computer World people here. I think you're outnumbered, dude. Anyway.
Samsung makes its own system on chip. It's a Exynos processor. It's not usually available in the US. It's more of an international thing. It's been a bit of a point of contention for Samsung fans because the Qualcomm chips are usually better, faster, more efficient, that type of stuff. Samsung made a pretty big leap with the most recent chip, and the number fails me, but it came out in January for the S21. But in the US, we still got the Snapdragon 888, because it's part of whatever licensing deal, whatever they have with Qualcomm. North America always gets the Snapdragon chips, and that's usually true of every major Android phone, period. I mean, it's not even major. The flagships get the better one, which right now is the 888 5G phone chip, and then there's a 700 series, a 600 series, and they go down from there. But Qualcomm has that locked here until really now. So yeah, it's a bit of a watershed moment for Google and for Android in general, although Google says that the Tensor chip is strictly for the Pixel, the Pixel 6. It didn't say, we're going to be licensing this chip, and I would be shocked if they did. That's not really Google's thing. They're much like Apple in that regard. They keep their stuff for themselves. Android gets what Android gets. But since the Pixel launched, what was it, 2015 maybe? 2016? Since it launched,
6, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
Right, 6 years. So right, 2015.
2015.
They they have treated that phone as like the ultimate vessel for Android, kind of like what iOS. I mean, there's no other way to get iOS, but it's a similar type of a thing. Like if you want that integration between hardware and software, this is the phone to get. Now, caveat, it really hasn't been as great as it could or should be. And that's why I'm interested. I'm interested in the chip. No, all right, let me stop before I get too deep into this. Ken, do you want to add something?
Yes, let me break it up just a bit. Just a larger picture here. Obviously the way Apple has pitched itself and its devices is with its own, basically building its own chip. It commands the stack, the hardware, the software, and therefore iPhone users get a better experience because Apple's in charge of everything.
Right.
It also removes weird supply chain issues. Sometimes should remove weird supply chain issues, meaning Apple doesn't have to rely on other suppliers. In terms of what Google's doing, actually J.R. Raphael had a blog post up on CW this morning talking about some of the takeaways. And I thought one of the interesting points that he made is that by doing it this way, Google will be able to basically offer software support because it's its own chip as long as it wants to. This is another way for Google to really differentiate the Pixel line from other Android phones. And now, many people may not care, but I think the tech savvy crowd, who want the unadulterated Android experience, or as best as they can get, close as they can get to that on the Google, this is one more sort of flag in the, stake in the ground, basically, from Google saying we're unique. This is different than, Samsung or whoever else. Does that jive with what you're thinking, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much updates are affected by the chip. Google offers 3 years. Samsung offers 3 years for a lot of its newer phones. Yeah, so Apple doesn't have like a guarantee. Like when you buy an iPhone, they don't say you're going to get 5 years of updates, but that's what they offer, 5 or 6, even in some cases. And there's been some pressure on Android to say, hey, this is enough is enough, particularly when it comes to security, because 3 years really isn't enough. When you're buying $1,000 phone, I always say, with the exception of Ken, most people hold on to their phones for more than a year, more than 2 years, maybe.
We haven't gotten to the 13 yet. This may be the year that I finally crack and hang on. No, I'm serious.
Right. Sure.
That'll be for a future edition of the show.
But it's important, as these phones get way more expensive and less subsidized and all that stuff. Like, people hold on to them. People hold on to the iPhone 6. iOS 15 will support the iPhone 6s from 2015, I think. That's impressive. We're getting 6 years out of that. And, there are going to be people out there that have that phone and use that phone every day and need those, and, need security updates, need regular feature updates. Yeah, of course, not everything works and it's not as fast as the newer phones, and all those caveats apply. But you should, when you buy $1,000 phone or an $800 phone or whatever it is, and Google has said this is going to be a premium phone, so we're looking at $1,000 for the 6 Pro, I would think. You should be guaranteed more than 3 years. 3 years is should be table stakes at this point.
Yeah,
and it should be for those phones, the S21, S22, whatever Samsung calls it next year, the Pixel 6 Pro. I would expect 4, even 5 years guaranteed of updates, like when you get an iPhone. Peace of mind. And I think that people might not care, in the sense that that's not fueling their buying decision, but they care and they notice. And it used to be where 2 years down the line, Samsung was like, no, we're not bothering with those anymore. But that wasn't that long ago. S8 maybe. It was only a few years ago when you were lucky to get 2 years of updates out of your Android phone. So they've come a long way. But yeah, they can do even better. And I don't know enough about chip manufacturing and design and structuring to know if that matters, but it certainly can't hurt in that regard.
So
I'm curious, Michael, what do you think? And again, I'm cribbing from the piece JR had this morning about the pivot back to like that this is going to be the high-end premium phone from Google, the Pixel, because last year it was sort of the opposite. Yeah. And in previous years, it was sort of what they're saying now. So any thoughts on why Google sort of went the route it did last year and is now returning and saying, no, this is the flagship premium phone, and it will be worth the price?
Yeah, my thought is that Google is completely and totally terrible and has no idea what it's doing with this stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years we go back to a mid-range phone.
God,
like they just don't know what to do with the Pixel. This is what it should have been all along.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the iPhone of Android.
Yeah.
And on paper, that's what we're getting here. That's also what they said the Pixel 4 was, and the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 2 and the original Pixel. The original Pixel had a hopelessly outdated design and was like $700. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't, and it looked cheap. And it was, it was about the AI stuff, which at the time was very novel. Google Assistant was very young, if you will, and it was a big deal. That stuff was a big deal, and that's what this is. So Tensor, why they're calling it the Tensor chip? Tensor's their AI engine.
It's the AI ML stuff.
Yeah. So we don't know what the CPU and GPU is, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that's just straight up Qualcomm Cortex stuff. Not Qualcomm, Cortex cores. Like, it's going to be similar in power, processing, graphics to probably the 800 series chips. I don't think we're going to get blow away speeds like we do with the A15, but this is the first generation. And maybe that stuff will come, maybe it won't. But to your point, this is the problem we have with trusting Google to do any of this stuff, because it loses its focus.
Change tomorrow.
Yeah,
like all go away.
It sees the next shiny object and it runs that in that direction.
Yeah.
There was a time when Google was killing it with one camera and they said, oh, that's all we need. Now we have 3. There was a time when there was a dedicated image signal processor. Now we have a system on chip with that stuff. Like it doesn't seem to really know what it wants to do with hardware and also software. There's a dedicated website, Killed by Google, which lists everything that Google ever had and killed. And there's a lot of stuff there, a ton of stuff. Look at its messaging, Hangouts, chat, messages, all this stuff. Like it's very unclear and unfocused with its strategies. It always has been. But
Right.
I have
Alright.
from day one. Wait, what?
We have a few viewer questions, unless you want to wax
Questions,
poetic a
I
little
bet.
No,
bit
go
more
ahead. I'm
about the
just
messaging.
ranting. You can interrupt me.
Get him before he starts a rant. Go.
So
Quick.
we have a few viewer questions, and some of these are echoing my questions. So the first one is, and you referenced this a little bit, Mike. Has the price of the Pixel 6 been revealed? So you're saying that it's a
hasn't
premium
been
phone,
revealed.
so you're thinking it'll be higher end.
Well, it absolutely.
On
But
the-
a couple of quotes from Rick Osterloh, who is the hardware chief.
Mm-hmm.
He told The Verge that it's going to be a premium product.
Right.
He told, I think it was Android developers that it will be an expensive product.
All right.
So he's definitely softening the blow. Like this isn't going to be a $700 phone. This is probably $9 and $1,000 for the Pixel 6, maybe $1,000 for the Pixel Pro, maybe more. It's going to be in the price of the iPhone.
It'll be in
Gotcha.
line with the top end iPhone.
The
Mhm.
higher end Samsung phones and the higher end iPhones. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then the other viewer question, and this is from LinkedIn. And again, if you have any questions while we are live, please do leave them either in the comments on LinkedIn or on the live chat on YouTube, and we will answer them while we are live. So this is from LinkedIn as well. Like I said, compared to the iPhone, let's say compared to the upcoming iPhone 13, any rumors around it, what are the pros in the Pixel 6? Great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't really know. So what Google has told us is the chip.
Right.
That was the big
The
reveal.
big news. Yeah.
was the Tensor chip. They've told us that the Pro will have 3 cameras, which will bring a telephoto lens for the first time, or if not the first time in a couple of generations. The Pixel 6 will have 2 cameras, which is wide and telephoto, wide and ultra wide.
Okay.
So we know that. It'll get Android 12, which obviously we know that. The design is something of a unique point in that it has what Google's calling a camera bar.
It's
So
up a
if-
line, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
All
bump.
row.
And
Yeah.
if anyone watching this has ever used the Nexus 6P from 2013, maybe it was a long time ago.
All 3 of you.
Yeah, no, I have one somewhere.
Okay.
It was a good
4.
phone. Man. Come on.
Four.
It was good. It was a good phone. Stop. But if anyone ever used that phone or saw that phone, it's very reminiscent of that. That was a monster phone. It was huge,
Yeah.
and at the top it had a little bar, a big bar across the top that kind of jutted out a bit, and contained all the camera hardware. That's what this is. And Google, they've done a nice job. There's like a 2-tone color pattern. So above the camera bar is a different color than the one below it. It looks very nice in pictures. I'm gonna say that it's probably ergonomically pretty nice too, because your hand kind of naturally needs a place to rest, and it looks like that will provide that. So I think design-wise, it looks pretty cool. The front is, my pet peeve is bezels that are not balanced, and this looks to be a little bit off balance with the screen, but it's a 6.4 inch and 6.7 inch screen. The Pro will be 1440p, I think, quad HD plus, whatever that is, and the non-Pro will be full HD. They'll be OLED, so very similar to the iPhone 6.1, 6.7. It's similar to that. That's all we know so far.
Right.
Google hasn't told us about any features or really any camera features, which I'm sure there will be plenty.
Mhm.
What it's doing with this AI stuff, there's going to be a lot there. If they're calling this a Tensor chip, the AI stuff will be next level, because it always is.
Mhm.
Google Assistant blows away Siri. Google's AI processing and photos, all that stuff, they're top of their game. And if they're bringing all that into the system on chip, into the device, onto the device itself, there's a lot that they can do.
All right.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, I think it's welcome to see something like this. I think
Oh,
Apple needs
absolutely.
some competition,
Please.
along these lines. And I don't know if people are actively comparing Android and iPhone devices these days. You tend to be locked into one ecosystem or the other. But, I mean, something like this is the kind of thing that might draw some techie
I
iPhone users to at least consider Android.
I think it's different when we're talking about Google. Google and
Yeah,
Android. Yes, it's Android, but it's also Google, and it's a different
correct.
mindset. So I do think that Apple buyers, iPhone buyers, will consider, depending on the price and where the
And the
availability. Like
features, yeah.
Google has shot itself in the foot numerous times with Pixels by it was exclusive to Verizon at first, and it was too expensive, and then you couldn't get one, and they're not great at actually delivering hardware. But once it's kind of like for those of you who know the Peanuts comic strips, Lucy football and Charlie Brown always thinks he's going to kick it. This is another one of those where every year I'm like, oh, good, another Pixel phone. And I'm all excited. I'm like, because they always somehow find a way to mess it up. But I'm a big fan of this move. I'm a big fan of the Pixel 6 moving to premium again.
Mhm.
Although I also kind of like the mid-range move. I wish they would find a way to do both.
Mhm.
And I agree with Ken in that the iPhone, it needs more competition. The Galaxy isn't really it. It's a great phone. But
Yeah.
to your point, that's not competition. They're peers. It's a
Mhm.
different thing. Google and Apple are competitors.
So
Agreed.
we have another chip related question from LinkedIn, and another great question. This viewer is asking, is Google making the Tensor chip, totally on its own, or is Google partnering with some other chip manufacturing company?
Yeah. Rumors are that it's Samsung is going to be manufacturing
Right, I
it,
saw that.
which makes sense because they make good chips.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're partnering now. Google always partners. I mean, they don't even technically make their own hardware. HTC made the first couple Pixels, and then they bought that whole team to make it.
Gotcha.
So it'll be a partnership. Google just doesn't really have like Apple. Apple is a hardware company.
Hmm.
Google is a software company, so they don't have that build out yet. Maybe they're going to have it. Maybe they'll fabricate their own chips at some point in the future. I don't know. But right now, it doesn't look like it.
So this is a question just from me, not necessarily from the audience, but I'm just wondering, like, where does, Google now with the Tensor chip, and then, I mean, Apple's been making its own iPhone chips for a while, but where does it kind of leave, like, the Qualcomms of the world for I guess when it comes to system on a chip? Because is Apple using Qualcomm 5G modems, or are they using different 5G?
They are.
Okay.
For
For
at least
now.
another year or two, maybe three.
Okay.
They bought, so Apple bought Intel's modem division, which never really got off the ground. I think in 2019.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
So they're building their own 5G modem. It's not ready for the iPhone 13. Probably won't be ready for the iPhone 14 either. These things, they're not an overnight thing, and you need that 5G modem to work, without interruption. So they're using the same modem that's in Android phones is the same modem that's in iPhones at the moment, and it will be for a little while. I highly doubt that Google gets into that game, and I also don't know what it means. So, all right, for one, the Pixel is a very, 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 very small part of Qualcomm's licensing catalog.
Sure.
They're not a big player. They're not even in the top 5, probably not even in the top 20 as far as phone sales. So as far as that goes, it doesn't really make much of a dent. But much like Apple and Intel, if this Tensor chip comes out and it's real blow away stuff with the neural engine, that will put some pressure on Qualcomm to respond.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to push them out or anything like that anytime soon.
They have a monopoly for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes.
But anytime you've got somebody of the size of Google come along and develop, again, as you say, Michael, if it does, if it blows the competition away, that's going to force them to sort of step up.
Yeah.
You get that constant sort of battle, and I think it's a good thing. We'll see how it plays out.
Competition's always good. Always
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So as we are wrapping up here with your segment, we do have just a few more questions, and this is just a final call.
This is great.
Final call for any questions.
I should rant about Google more.
Definitely. So this question is from a LinkedIn viewer. What technology will Google's chip be based on, and how many, I assume, nanometer technology?
Yeah. Again, we don't really know that stuff, but it looks to be based on that Cortex
Right.
Snapdragon and probably 5 nanometers.
Okay.
But Google hasn't released that yet. We're just kind of speculating and going off of rumors. But it looks to be very similar to the higher end Snapdragon processors.
I'd be willing to bet if they had gone to 3 nanometers, we'd hear about it now. They'd be talking it up,
Yeah.
So
for
silence there indicates probably 5. Yeah.
I would think. And 7 is kind of passe for mobile phones now. So 5
I'm sure wouldn't be talking about that.
Yeah.
It's like,
So I guess my final question kind of is like, what's the when? When can we see the Pixel 6? They had like this. Do they normally make a big hardware announcement every year? Is it at
they do.
Google I/O? Did I make that up?
Google I/O is separate. That's a developer conference.
Right,
Sometimes
okay.
they release something
Like
hardware related.
The A
but
series, I remember, right? Like the 4 A's.
Once they did that
Okay.
there, but it's not. They've done the Pixel for the last bunch of years in October, and it'll probably be the same October, early November. They say fall. It's not September because that's iPhone month, and so they want to space it out where they'll get the attention that they want. So they said fall. My guess is October. And one quick thing that we didn't talk about is security.
Yeah.
And Google's being
Talk about
pretty
it.
vague about it. But the quote is that the Pixel 6 is, quote, built with the most layers of hardware security in any phone, which is, as I wrote in my story, a very weirdly specific
I was
claim.
just going to say,
and I'm
what
not
is layer?
100%
Define
sure what it
layers,
means.
You can define layers in
Yeah,
lots of ways.
I
though.
don't
That may
know.
be meaningful or not.
But the point is that that's one of the things they chose to
pitching it.
highlight. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does mean that. And now we've talked before about the difference between security and privacy, and they're very different things. But the fact that Google is highlighting the security of the Pixel phone is definitely a good thing, and it speaks to the chip and the integration and how all that's working. And that's Apple. That's Apple at work. That's Apple putting pressure on the rest of the industry to get their phones as secure and tight as possible, and Android as well. Google has worked a ton over the last couple of years to get Android more secure with to kind of limit side loading and all the things that cause those malware to creep in. And this is just one more example of that, which is also just great. This is the Pixel 6, regardless of how good the phone is, the premise of what's happening here is good for the industry.
Yep, can't top that. I agree.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for calling in and joining me to chat about this. I think this is interesting. I feel like this is definitely like not going to be the last discussion that we ever have about the Google Tensor chip, because I feel like once the Pixel 6 comes out and once the iPhone 13 comes out, there's probably going to be an opportunity for some more meaningful comparison. But in the meantime, it was great to sort of, chat logistics, learn a little bit about it. So thank you both so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
Just quick, I want to say that I like this dribble of information. Google does this often, and I think it's awesome. I think Apple should do it. It's like a little appetizer.
Sure.
For the main course coming in a couple of months, and I don't think there's anything wrong with teasing the people who want who want the product that this is coming, and then shut up about it for a couple of months.
Eat up.
I like it.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
So right now we are going to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about the hybrid workforce. So in many parts of the world, a lot of us have been working remotely for just about a year and a half now. And as, again, in some parts in the world, some of us prepare to go back to the office, it means that companies need to start thinking really strategically about what hybrid first work looks like. It's going to be something that's really appealing to a lot of people. So I have here Charlotte Truman, writer for Computer World, as well as Val Potter, the managing editor for features for Computer World. And Charlotte, you have a piece coming up on Computer World, which is going to be published on Monday as part of, a bigger package of stories. So we'll be sure to link to that once it's live. But can you tell us a little bit, I guess, about what it kind of means to to cultivate a hybrid first workforce, because that hybrid first is definitely different than like the, hybrid but by necessity, I guess, sort of work that we've been doing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Juliet. So a lot of organizations or companies in the past have kind of had this work model where people are in the office most of the time, but say if you've got kind of like a childcare issue or you've got like a maintenance issue and you need to be at home for whatever reason, you can flag that with your boss and say, hey, on Thursday, I'm going to work from home. Is that okay? Obviously, then the pandemic came along and kind of everyone was out of the office and in their homes. And now kind of moving forward, a lot of companies are looking to adopt this hybrid model where employees get to decide, say they come into the office once a week or they're in the office 3 times a week, but actually there's no kind of one or the other. There's no stipulation of one or the other. And the big difference, as you kind of mentioned, between hybrid allowed and hybrid first is that there's real intention behind making this hybrid work model actually work for employees.
Yeah. So I guess let's just, reference your article a little bit and talk about what you were hearing from some sources about, why they want to create a hybrid first workforce and kind of what it means to intentionally do so.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this is kind of driven by what employees want and kind of their experience over the last 18 months. Obviously, it's important to note that working from home in a pandemic is not really representative of working from home generally.
Certainly.
You can't even get out to the shops very easily. That's obviously not what your experience would be like normally day to day. But yeah, so this kind of intention behind it is making sure that everything you do in terms of your new kind of way of working, that you think about your hybrid workers first. So how are people that aren't in the office, how is, say, I don't know, how is the collaboration going to work, but also make sure it works for them just as well as it's going to work for people in the office. So if you have an important meeting, say, how do you make sure that the people who are working remotely have just a good experience of that as the people that are sitting in the office?
That's important. And Val, I actually want to turn this to you now. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what I guess the in-person versus remote bias could be when it comes to making important decisions like promotion, who takes on a project, and how managers are going to need to be really cognizant of who's working from home and who's in the office to make sure that people aren't getting looked over.
It's just a natural thing that when employees are out of sight, they're out of mind. And so, pre-pandemic times when most people worked in the office most of the time, including the highest levels, the people who got noticed, the people who got the plum projects, the people who then got the promotions because they had just done these plum projects, it tended to be the ones who were in the office more, and remote employees just often, even if they were working harder, they were, doing just as good or better work. It's just a lot easier to overlook people who are remote. And so once we all worked from home all the time, that sort of went away. The playing field leveled a lot. And, in a meeting, when it used to be there were 15 people in a conference room and 2 on the bridge, just, dialing in on the phone, it was really easy for those people on the phone to get forgotten. And so then once we all went home and we were all in a Zoom meeting with the Brady Bunch layout, it puts everybody on an equal footing. And we all kind of got back to this level playing field again. And now once employees start going back into that meeting room again, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to ensure that equality once again. And that's why it really has to be intentional. You can't just assume that if the employees who are remote are having a bad experience, that they're going to raise their hand about it. You really, really need to engage them and be proactive and make sure that experience at home is just as good as the one in the office. And one of the things that the sources that Charlotte talked to kept stressing was that this has to come from the highest levels of management. If your executives are in the office, everybody else is going to think they have to be in the office too. They're also not going to understand what the experience is like. So for the remote employees. So again, it's if people are the executives themselves are working at home, they're going to see what that's like, and they're going to know, okay, well, we need to work on this. We need to make this a more equal experience for everybody.
And just to kind of butt in and point to that thing about making the experience equal, and a lot of companies with a kind of, when they're talking about adopting this hybrid work model, one of the benefits, should I say, is that they can hire a more diverse range of people. So people with disabilities that might not be able to travel into an office so easily, people with kind of care commitments, or people that live too far away that normally they'd have been excluded from that job. So this point about management and kind of not knowing when management are going to be in the office, if that starts to slip and actually management do start coming back into the office 5 days a week, and people that can be more flexible with then coming into the office themselves, again, they're going to be seen to be there, and this unconscious bias will kind of slip in. And actually these kind of talks that have been had around kind of equality and diversity, they kind of slip away, because the people that say, like I say, your new employees that might be disabled or might have care commitments, they start to think, oh, perhaps I do now have to go back into the office because I need management to see me. And actually it kind of just, the whole thing unravels and you're back to square one.
Absolutely. So it really does seem like the key to any success here is, and I know it's a pretty popular policy, Charlotte, it's like the overwhelming majority of company executives, C-suite executives say, yes, like we will allow people to work hybridly, remotely, whatever that really means for them. So, but it does kind of seem like if you're going to allow hybrid work, that basically just means that you really need to be thinking remote first, because it really does seem possible that these employees who are not, physically in person in the office all the time can be at a disadvantage, and also just that their work experience just won't be as good. So I think I want to maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about, some of the technologies around remote work that can be really helpful for implementing an intentionally hybrid work policy. So we've been everyone is Zooming all day long. I think we're used to that. But once some of us start being in the office, some of us are from home, what are some technology solutions, and also just the general policies that IT should be thinking about?
Yeah, so a lot of these kind of collaboration platforms that we've got so used to over the last 18 months are actually now, as they move forward and kind of continue to develop new features for their platforms, they're actually doing it, or a lot of them are doing it with this kind of hybrid workplace in mind. So they're talking to their customers, and their customers are saying, this is the work model that we want to have. How can your platforms facilitate that? So you mentioned Zoom, for example. One of the things they've developed is when you're on a Zoom call, like Val said earlier, you kind of have this Brady Bunch layout. Obviously, if you're sat in so say that you had colleagues sat with you, or I had colleagues sat with me, normally we'd all be in the same frame, but then the people dialing in remotely would be in a separate frame. What Zoom have done is actually each person now will have their own kind of square, so it doesn't feel kind of so much like us in the office versus you dialing in at home. Everyone again is on that level playing field. Another thing we've started to see is the rise of kind of asynchronous communication, especially asynchronous video. So Cisco actually kind of this week have announced a new product called Vidcast, where instead of trying to scramble to have a meeting when everyone's in different time zones, or everyone kind of is just busy for say weeks at a time, you can actually just record a short 15-minute video with kind of where you share your screen or kind of upload content that you would be presenting in a meeting, and then you upload it to the platform, and then people can view that as and when is kind of accessible for them. So yeah, companies are definitely kind of mindful of this new kind of hybrid way of working and what they can do to kind of help support companies with that.
And I'd like to stress too, it doesn't necessarily have to be new technology, but asynchronous collaboration has actually been around for a while. I mean, that's what Google Docs are, or a shared Word document. You don't necessarily have to be working simultaneously with your coworkers. You could, if there's a shared space where you can go and collaborate, it doesn't necessarily have to be in real time. And that really, again, helps those employees who have commitments, people they're caring for, children they have to drop off at school or not these days, who knows. Just not insisting, Zoom calls are great for what they are, but that's not the only way to communicate and the only way to collaborate. And so that's something to keep in mind. And another, something that's sort of riffing on that actually is a newer technology. I mean, digital whiteboards have been around for a while, but there's sort of a new breed of them that are coming out that offer a lot more advanced capabilities. And it really is they call them shared canvases or visual collaboration spaces. And they just sort of allow everything. There's that traditional whiteboarding functionality where people actually can draw as if it's on a whiteboard, but they can also put sticky notes on it, digital sticky notes. They can upload files, they can upload their PowerPoint presentation, they can upload videos, and it all just kind of lives in this one big shared canvas. And you can have one for every project you're working on, or you could have a team shared one, or however you want to divide it up. But there are new things and old coming out that are really good ways for teams to work together without necessarily having it be together in time as well.
Sure. And I think too, what I imagine would be important is really making sure that when a lot of your not a lot, all of your remote workers are going to be relying on, XYZ technology solution, I would imagine that it's important as an IT team to really make sure that you're engaging your employees as partners and making sure that you're available and open to hearing their opinions, because if they're having a really miserable remote work experience or a really miserable hybrid work experience, then what was the point of the policy in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things that kind of came up again and again when I spoke to people for this story is obviously every company is going to be different, and there'll be kind of overarching policies that come from on high that's just going to be how it is. Say, oh, you're mandated in the office these days a week, right, or whatever. There's going to be things that senior management will, mandate. But actually, as you kind of get down the lower levels and kind of if you manage a team or something like that, talk to your employees, talk to your team and be like, hey, what will work for us as a team? What's going to make us as a team more productive? Do you want to let your colleagues know that between, Val said, I have childcare commitments, I have a school run between these times, so don't message me between these times because I'm afraid I won't get back to you, or I work better in the morning, so can I start kind of 2 hours earlier and finish 2 hours earlier, as long as that doesn't, impact the wider team. Maybe that's something you can do. So you really need to, again, it comes back to this kind of being intentional with it. You really need to engage your employees, find out what's going to work best for them, and then go from there.
And I'd say that works for technologies you're adopting as well. Find out what your remote workers' pain points are, and try to work with them to come up with a technology solution that will help address that problem. And there's no point. And then of course, once you do bring in new tools and new technologies, make sure to take the time to train your users and that they actually understand how to use them. There's no point in throwing a bunch of tools at them and letting them sink or swim. That's not going to be a good experience for anybody.
Certainly not. So I think I just want to transition here to talking about, these are all a ton of great strategies to implement and something to certainly be consciously thinking about, as, in many parts of the world, I shouldn't even really say many. In some parts of the world, companies are welcoming employees back on, certainly a modified basis in some cases. I want to talk about the consequences of not doing so. What is going to happen if you don't adapt, and how will you sort of get left behind? You, as in the company, your company.
Yeah, I wrote earlier in the year about the UK, at least, about how unfortunately working from home is not right, and it's not legally enshrined in law, no matter how much employees kind of want it to. And you're absolutely right. There is, although like the overwhelming number of employees say that this is what they want, some employers, I mean, I can only really talk to kind of what I've seen in the UK, but in certain sectors, kind of banking and things like that, they're very keen to get people back into the office. Just this week, our Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK came out and said, young people, if you're not in the office, you're going to be missing out on kind of career progression. It's really important that you work from the office. So there is definitely still kind of a kind of friction, I guess, between what employees want and what employers want or are kind of willing to offer. But absolutely, I think in sectors where being kind of present in the office, where actually everyone has proven that you can work effectively from home, you don't need to have kind of face-to-face interactions with kind of clients or customers. If you are hiring for roles and someone comes in and says, hey, so what's your flexible work policy like? If you don't have one or you don't offer one, I think you're going to struggle to kind of take on a lot of employees or retain employees, because if every other company in your sector has got a good kind of flexible working or remote working policy in place, I know where I'd rather go. So I think that's going to be a struggle for some companies if they're kind of refusing to kind of adapt, I guess.
And again, there's that distinction between companies that are allowing remote work and then those that are embracing it and really supporting it, because even if you have a flexible policy, but then you don't back it up by making it a really positive experience for everybody, the employees, even if you're allowing it, your top talent's going to leave and go someplace else that's doing a better job of it. And even those employees who stay, maybe they just feel like they don't have any other choices. Maybe they're just going to over time become disengaged if they're working their butts off at home and doing the best they can, and they're not getting anywhere, they're not getting those promotions, they're not getting the good assignments. Maybe they stop trying so hard over time, and you're not getting their best work out of them.
And I know it's kind of still early days, like we've said, in a lot of parts of the world, offices aren't even reopening yet, or we're kind of still a long way off. But just anecdotally from people I know and some of my friends that have kind of moved jobs recently or interviewed for jobs, one of the questions they've all asked is, what's your flexible work policy like? How many days a week am I going to have to be in the office? And that's really, again, for my friends that have been interviewing lately, that's really kind of informed their decision about the roles they've taken and the jobs they kind of interview for. So we're already starting to see it happen.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for calling in and chatting about it. I think there's some really great takeaways here, not only here in the video that we've discussed, but also, Charlotte, in your article that we will link below when it is live on Monday, August 9th. So if you're watching this live, it's not currently up yet, but it will be. So come back and you can check out the link in the description. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Julia.
And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you are watching over on Computer World, do head over on the Computer World LinkedIn, do head over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk. You can like the video over there, as well as subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can hit the bell icon as well so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If you have any outstanding questions or comments that we didn't get to, please do leave them in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you on Charlotte or Val's behalf. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.